You are listening to Be Amplified, the podcast with Bree and Thais, episode number 4.
Hey Amplifiers, welcome to Be Amplified, the podcast. My name is Thais.
And I'm Bree Seeley. We are the co-founders of the Amplify Collective,
A movement aimed at radically disrupting how purpose-driven women connect and operate in the world.
Because we believe it's not just what you do, but who you are that matters.
Each week, join us for messages and interviews that will leave you feeling amplified and ready to change the world.
Let's do this.
Welcome, Amplifiers, to the Be Amplified podcast. Thais here, and we're going to talk today about struggle. We're bringing on an amazing guest, Angela Mader from Philosophy, to talk about the subject a little bit more, but we're going to dive right in first and share a little bit about our philosophy around struggle and why is it that we're all struggling.
Yeah, but we have a little bit of a different take on it, so I'm excited to get into this conversation so that we can bring you a little shift in perspective on struggle.
I'm going to create some magic with you guys today.
Yeah, a little bit.
No, not a big deal. So let's talk about struggles because let's be real, we struggle. I mean, I think struggle is simply a part of living an amplified life. I mean, how can you go to greatness? How can you really create something you've never created before if you don't have struggle?
So let's be real. Everyone that's living an amplified life wants you to think that it's all rainbows and unicorns.
Wait a minute. It's not.
Palm trees. I mean, come on. If you look at our Instagram accounts, we all portray this beautiful, perfect life. But the reality is that behind a lot of that, there's so many people that are experiencing loneliness that don't know how to show it on social media or don't know how to talk about it. So many people that are not able to pursue their dreams like they want to because of fear or doubt or, worth issues or things like that. And
I mean, there's people on Instagram that from appearance looks like they're running their business and it's a successful 6-figure business. And then when you talk to them, you find out they have 3 side hustles to support their business. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, it gives us the impression that everything's all good and dandy when in reality, it's like a duck, right? At the top on the surface, it looks like they're just gliding along, but underneath they're like really kicking ass and taking names. And sometimes I think it's important for us to really examine what kicking ass and taking names looks like so that we're not fooled by the journey, because there's nothing worse than thinking it's going to be easy and then it not being easy and then you're thinking that there's something wrong with you because it's not easy.
Let's get real. I mean, I have probably had some of the hardest days of my life in the past 2 years. I mean, realistically, I think I've probably cried more in the last 2 years than I probably have for my entire life.
Yeah, I mean, I've cried more. I've had more emotional mood swings. I've experienced more doubt and fear than I ever have. And part of it is because we're really recalibrating our way of thinking. We're recalibrating of what's possible for us. And anytime we're up-leveling, anytime we're taking a quantum leap in any capacity, it is obvious, it is no doubt in my mind that all of the things that has kept us from going after our dreams are going to pop up. It's kind of like the universe reminding us, hey, are you sure? Like, are you really sure that you want to say yes to this? And the way it does it is by bringing up all the fears and all the doubts and all the insecurities. For example, here's an easy example, right? How is it that every time we say, you know what, I am done with my ex-boyfriends. I am ready to find someone new. I am ready to find a sexy man that's going to take care of me. Every time we say that, what happens? We get a phone call from our ex-boyfriend. Or we get a text message from an ex, or it pops up on Facebook. It always happens. It's like the universe just saying, are you sure? Are you sure you're ready for something new? So let's talk about the struggle, because first off, everyone struggles. Everyone makes it look easy, but everyone is struggling. And 2, there's nothing wrong with struggling.
So Thais and I's little twist that we actually wanted to present to everyone is the benefits of struggling.
What?
I know, right? Like we're supposed to struggle like this. There's actually goodness that comes from struggle.
I mean, here's the point. I come from a background of disordered eating. I had binge eating issues, emotional eating issues for 7 years. And for 3 of those years, I was in complete denial that I had any problems or anything wrong with me. I thought if I just exercised more, everything would go away. And it didn't go away. So I thought, oh, if I just deprived myself more, I would just lose weight. Nothing happened. And I hit a dark night of the soul where I had to really come down to my knees and pray. And I was an atheist at the time, so that did not feel good. But I knew that what I was doing was not working to where I needed to go. And so I prayed and I said, Dear God, please help me. I don't know who you are and I don't know if you know me, but I need help. And God responded and I heard the answer to my call. And it was like, you know what, Thais, you're going to be okay. And from that moment on, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm not alone in this. And oh my gosh, I need to try new things. One called self-love, which I know is radical. And that's my journey. My spiritual journey began pretty much around that time. And that evening was the catalyst for it. So the struggle, the binge eating, the 3 years of gaining weight, of fluctuating, of being miserable, of stuffing my face, of pretending like I'm happy when inside I was in this huge turmoil and angst and hated myself and all of that stuff. Looking back, I can say, thank God. Thank God I had that experience. Thank God that was my life. Because without that struggle, I would not be where I am today. One. And two, I would not have had the spiritual awakening that I had and the realization that I'm not alone. So we can look at struggle like life is happening against us. We can look at struggle like we're a victim. We can look at struggle like, oh, poor me, this is so hard. Why is it so hard? I'm clearly not good enough. Or we can look at struggle as a gift, as a radical gift, saying you're meant for something bigger. And this struggle is going to be the catalyst for you to explore what that is.
My dark night of the soul was not quite as eloquent as Thais's. There was a lot of ugly crying.
No.
Some snot, like, a lot of like, it just wasn't as like, I didn't get quite the clear answer that you got, but involved me on my bed in the fetal position after having gotten some bad news and just bawling my eyes out. I mean, I think I really had two dark nights of the soul within 4 months of each other.
Wow.
And the other one, again, lots of ugly crying and, snot and things like that, with my employer telling me that they were going to cut my pay in half. And so I know that for me, part of the thing that makes struggle so hard in the moment, of course, is that we're unable to see outside of that.
Yeah.
We're unable to see what's on the other side of that. And for me, it was really a phone call that I made. It was the second dark night of the soul that I had that during that 4-month period, that a phone call I made just really reminding me not to spiral down into that darkness, but to really sit and allow the universe to fill me with what was on the other side. What is the silver lining? Why is this happening in my life? And trusting, like truly, truly, deeply trusting, letting go of expectations and allowing the universe to come in and support me. And that is really when I started writing for the Huffington Post. I mean, it was 4 hours later that I got the email from Ariana. It was, me launching my book project and getting the 99 women to say yes, and being on the Today Show and raising $15,000 for self-publishing. And, when you're in the suffering, it's so hard to see outside of it. And the more that you can kind of just surrender and allow everything to play out, there is always goodness on the other side.
Well, so many things we can pull from that. One is, that's a beautiful story, really, because I think it really is inspiring for us to really understand that when we are in the middle of the struggle, we really think it's forever. Our mind really goes to, this is the way it's going to be for the rest of our lives. And it's important for us in that moment to recognize this is temporary. So one of my favorite mantras that I use every time I'm experiencing a down, I mean, this is every time I'm in a place where I feel so desolate and so alone or hopeless or whatever I'm experiencing, is this too shall pass. So this too is important all by itself, because what I'm saying is I do not resist this. This experience is allowed into my being, into my existence. This is okay. I am okay experiencing this. So this too, I accept, I love this too. And then this too shall pass. This will pass. This is not my life forever. I am not going to be stuck and alone and miserable in a hot apartment in Boston forever. This is going to pass. And I think that your story, Brie, and mine, is such a beautiful example of that, because clearly we've moved through that experience. Clearly, after 7 years, I am now completely free around food, and I do not even calorie count, something that I could not tell you was going to be a part of my existence in the future. And then I think the other beautiful point of this story is that, at the end of the day, the struggle is always going to take you somewhere higher when you surrender to it. I think the reason why my story is so powerful is because, well, for me anyway, is because I prayed. So the act of prayer is an act of acknowledging that there's something beyond you and acknowledging that what you're doing is not conducive to your growth. So by praying, you are saying, external force, love, whatever it is, please come into my life. Please support me, because I know that how I'm doing it is not working. And for you, Bree, that happened slightly different, but still there was that point of surrender for you. And it's amazing what happens when you surrender, when you release, when you say, take me, take all of me, kill me, let me be the phoenix, let me burn in this ash. I'll like completely be in it. We rise.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, some of the deepest moments that I've had, it is that surrender. Even at the beginning of this year, I was having a really hard time, and finally just had to throw up my hands and say, fuck it. Like, I can't care anymore. I can't effort. I can't control. I can't do any of it. And it was out of that I have had the most successful months of my life.
Oh, yeah. I remember you telling me you really had a dark moment. You had almost a whole month where you
It
were
was like 6 weeks.
where you just really let yourself just be in the rubble, be in the deconstruction. And just by allowing yourself to be it, I saw it. It was beautiful. You really moved through it. And January, right, was like your highest grossing month in your business
So far.
so far. Yeah.
I'm ready for more.
Of course. So, and of course, like this struggle part, I mean, one of my favorite stories is the Jesus story. Whether or not you're Christian, whether or not you believe in Jesus, I don't think it matters. Let's just dissect real quick just the story of Jesus on the cross, because here's this man who completely touts the message of love, right? Love thy neighbor, love, 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 love. And he was preaching something that was radically different at the time. And he was crucified for it. And on the cross, he said, why, God, have you forsaken me? And what I love about that is that in that moment, he experienced total humanness. He experienced this total sense of, I'm human just like you. And I think that's what makes Jesus so relatable. He's not just this entity that comes down to this earth as a perfect being. He too can experience doubt, which means if he can experience doubt, this man that was like totally about love all the time, then that gives us permission to experience doubt. But what happens next? He gets crucified, he, gets killed, and then he rises. He has that resurrection. Again, it doesn't really matter if you believe that his body rose from, it doesn't matter. The point is, the crucifixion was not the last step. The next step was the rising, just like that phoenix, the rising. So death, struggle, pain, darkness, hopelessness, suffering, depression, that is never the last step. There is always a step beyond, and it will always be a rising. So surrender to it. And of course, hold up a second. We're not saying this is easy.
Oh my gosh.
Right. And we're not saying that it's all cakes and roses once you decide to surrender. It's not. We are saying that there is a next step. And the more you can surrender to the process, the faster the next step is going to come to you.
And really, I think for me, it's the faith that I have that there is something on the other side. I think that is really what carries me so far, that, no matter what it looks like, no matter what happens, I just have the faith that whatever is coming is going to be better than whatever the hell I'm sitting in right now.
Yeah. And I also want to take away the shame around struggle. I think we talked a little bit about in the beginning that everyone is struggling, even though they may be appearing on social media that they're not struggling. But, I still feel like as women, we have this idea that we have to be perfect and we have to have it all together, and we cannot.
The Stepford wife thing.
We can't possibly express to the world that we're struggling, because it means something about us, and it means that we're inept and that we're incapable. And that's just not the case. Again, we all struggle. So let's take away the shame. And instead of having shame, let's rely on each other. I mean, how often, Brie, when you experienced, moments of down, that you just wanted to be like a hermit, right? And like totally close the doors and disconnect your phone and completely just cut everyone away.
Yeah, and really, what I found is that, I mean, we all know this, that is not the healthy way of doing things, because
Mm-mm.
the more that you're alone, the more you're in your own head, the more you're telling yourself stories about the struggle and all of these things. And so now, Thais and I are very lucky to have one another, because when one of us gets into that place, we call each other and we ask for support, because I fully believe that we can bear the burden of life alone and it's super heavy and cumbersome, or we can call on those around us and ask
Mm-hmm.
them to help shoulder the burden with us.
And it's so funny how even though I know this consciously, I still do it to Mark all the time. I still would rather cut him out and just say, I'm fine, and be, completely cold to him than open up. And it's amazing how every time, because Mark is a very present person and he just stands there and he's like, no, I'm not going away until you say what's up. And every time I'm like, you know what? Okay. And I unburden myself to him. I immediately feel better. And that's the point. It's the unburdening. And that doesn't look necessarily like complaining, because I think a lot of times in the spiritual world, we're like, be positive, don't complain. This is not the same thing. This is saying, you know what? I need to release this energy from my life by sharing it, vocalizing it, writing it, running with it, taking it out of my body and into the world to those that I know can handle my stuff. Be careful with this. You only want to unleash to those who can handle it, who can be present for you and not try to fix you, because that's the
Yeah.
worst.
Oh, that is so hard.
Yeah. So when you can find people that you can really unleash to, you feel this sense of lightness. That's when the answers come. That's when you start to find, okay, I can do this. I have the support around me. It's really, you have to unburden yourself. You can't hold that stuff in your heart, or else it's going to give you a heart attack.
Yeah. So cheers to the struggles. We all have them. Let's embrace them, love on them a little bit, and really start seeing them as the gift that they are in our lives.
Yeah. And unburden yourself. Surround yourself with a community of people who can really support you, who can hold you steady, who can allow you to unburden. And the more that you can release this energy within your body, the less dis-ease you create in your body. I really think that by bottling things up, we close ourselves off to the flow, to the alignment. And so it's through that unburdening, through the sharing, that we really, really, really say, you know what, I am ready for a new thing. It's kind of like the cup being totally full, right? Like when you fill up your cup so much with all your own crap, you don't have space for anyone else's love. You don't have space for anyone else's idea. You don't have space for God to come in and do its thing. So if you release some of that water, pour it out, share it out into the world with those that can support it. Again, not Facebook. For the love of goodness, people, not Facebook. Through people that can actually hold you, that can physically support you. Get on the phone, get in front of people, okay? When you do that, you really do a service to yourself.
Thais, it's time.
Yay, I am so, so, so excited for today's guest.
She is absolutely brilliant, and I cannot wait for our listeners to hear her wisdom today.
Hi, Angela, darling. Welcome to Be Amplified, the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So before we dive in, let me share a little bit of background on Angela for our listeners. Angela is the founder of Fitlosophy. The mission of Fitlosophy is to inspire people to live a healthy, active lifestyle by motivating and supporting them with innovative products to redefine how people integrate fitness into their lifestyle and to change the shape of our world, literally. Angela created the company's flagship product, the Fitbook, and subsequent line of healthy lifestyle products and programs to promote taking a positive approach to reaching goals and to live life fit. She's taken what was once her own personal battle to fuel her passion for positively influencing the lives of others.
Ooh, I am so excited to unpack all of that. But before we get in, Angela, tell us, what does it mean for you to live an amplified life?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And, I had some time to think about this because I love the word amplify and what that means. And for me, it really came down to living an amplified life is really the refusal to accept mediocrity and adamantly pursuing your purpose in life, whatever that might be. And so I really think about that word amplify, and it's actually very energetic to me. And it's how I choose, I would say to live my life, and not choosing, hey, this is where I am, but more the possibility of where could I be.
Those are such great words. The refusal to live in mediocrity. Is there a time in your life when you were living that way, and how did you kind of get out of that and switch to what you're doing now?
I think mediocrity is defined by the individual, right? I would say that, what I like to say is sometimes whenever I think I'm living in mediocrity, others may see me as excelling. But our own definition of mediocrity is what will either propel us or hold us back. And so I think that, somewhat why I have achieved some things or accelerated at some things has been because my own definition of success is always what's driving me. And so when you ask me, have I ever been at a level of mediocrity? Yeah. But I could say at that same time, some of the times when I was quote unquote mediocre, I was actually doing some pretty big things. So I think that the way I like to describe it is my expectations of myself are always way beyond anybody else's. And that, is truly what drives me forward.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I know that we have a lot of ambitious listeners who want to do big things and who are terrified of the idea of mediocrity. And that's why they're listening. That's why they're going forward and reading the books and achieving a lot. And I also know that we have to balance that with some of that softness and understanding that we do have limitations and we are where we are for a reason, and being compassionate with that. So tell us, Angela, I know that you come from that fitness background. What inspired you to get into this healthy lifestyle, and how do you balance between the active and the forcing and the yes with with the other side, which is the calming and the allowing and the surrender?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, one thing you said that really kind of struck a chord with me is, allowing for that softness and not kind of giving yourself grace in times of struggle. Because I think if you're always pushing yourself to go, 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 achieve, 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 you actually can just burn yourself out. And I only say this because I know it from, from experience. Life happens. And so you kind of have to step back sometimes and just say, hey, I'm going to expect this from myself, but I'm also going to give myself grace when life is going to, pose some problems or things like that. And I think sometimes we risk, burnout if we don't do that. But, one thing that I guess resonates with me is sometimes the toughest times in life have been the things that have kind of resulted in my strengths and found my strengths through those. And so, the way I got into the quote unquote fitness industry, and I always say I'm an entrepreneur first. I'm not a fitness expert. I'm not, I am a certified trainer and nutrition, certified, but I'm not aiming to be some, high level fitness expert or something like that. I am an entrepreneur that creates products that helps people. And so to answer your question, I fell into this because, it was about 7 years of battling eating disorders of my own that I came to this process of journaling that really helped me kind of overcome that. It wasn't like I had this brilliant idea. I started making a product to help myself and help myself recover from something that I was very ashamed of for many years. I started Fitlosophy in 2008, and I was not open about this struggle in the beginning because I was ashamed of it. But what I've found is through that struggle, I've been able to find my strength and actually find my purpose that can help others.
Oh my gosh. There's so much that we can talk about there.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. So can you elaborate a little bit more on how that journaling helped you through that struggle, that place of hesitation and kind of, I almost feel struggle as like a stickiness. So how did journaling kind of like propel you through that?
Well, I think any time in life, whether it's an eating disorder, whether it's depression, whether it's, grief, whether it's, joy, even, I think a lot of times, the outside world and can tell you, you're bad, you're not enough, you're struggling. And so we take that inward, right? And so many people think that eating disorders are everything to do with what you look like. And in fact, they have nothing to do with what you look like. That's just the outward experience of people in the world. The truth is, it's really an addiction. It's a control issue. It was me at a very, very young age trying to grasp control of over a life that I felt like I had very little control of. And I had a blessed life. Let's back that up. I'm not trying to have some pity story here, but in my life, as a teenage girl, there were some things going on to escape. And that was my outlet. And so it was through journaling that I started writing. It was actually part of a program that I went through in college, where they made me journal, and they wouldn't allow me to track my calories and all this. But they made me just write. And I actually found my love for writing there. I love writing. But I also found out that all those issues that I thought were my body, were actually my mind. And so that's why, in our products, we take a very different approach to health and fitness and wellness than a lot of companies out there, because my true belief is that if we can have you achieve something and feel really good about yourself, it creates positive thoughts, it creates positive action, it creates positive momentum versus telling you what you're not. And let's face it, most of the industry that I'm in, the fitness industry, is about, if you don't look like this, you need to keep working, you need to work harder. But the truth is we need to be our best versions of ourselves, not live up to somebody else's standards. So it was kind of journaling that exposed that to me. And I wanted to kind of share that with the world.
Oh, that's amazing. And, I also come from a background where I have experienced disordered eating and binge eating, emotional eating, and then over exercising. And so I know the power of journaling. I've experienced it in my own life, how journaling was also the gateway for me to start writing and find more confidence in my writing. And then that's when I started blogging and everything went from there. So I really love that you shared that. And we appreciate your vulnerability. I know it's,
Of course.
this type of stuff is not easy to talk about, but I want to take us even a step deeper. And you mentioned grace, and I love that word so much, grace in time of struggle. And I know from my personal experience that control and grace are almost the opposite end of a spectrum. And of course, there's all that stuff in the middle, but I see grace as being on one side and this idea of control being on the other. And I would love to hear more about your experience, having experienced grace and also coming from a space of control. And how did you go from this control to surrender and to grace and to allowing the miracles to come in?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing about that is it's a daily surrender. It's not something that I did and woohoo, look at me. It is a daily conscious choice to surrender my need for control. That is my humanness. That is what makes me me. That's also what makes me amazing sometimes too. And let me kind of unpack that a little bit. My need for control is why I'm so detail oriented. My need for control is why my products are meticulous. My need for control are why I pay attention to things that other people wouldn't. And so those are kind of the things that make me wonderful. And at the same time, they hold me back. So this need for control is a daily choice to let go, because at the end of the day, none of us really have control. And it's an accepting that. And really, grace is something that we're given. It's not something that we do. Grace isn't something that you can earn. It's just something you accept. And so it's almost like I like to think of it as like if you're holding on to a handful of sand. You can't open up your palm and receive that grace if you're holding on to control. And so it's kind of this daily thing. This is why I'm very mindful. This is why, I have a very strong faith. That is why I know my weaknesses, but I don't dwell on them. Because if all I did was sit around and think, oh, you're a perfectionist, you're type A, you're a control freak. That's the self-talk that's in my head a lot of times. And sometimes through the process of journaling, that's where I find, no, this is not who you were created to be.
Wow.
I love that you talked about it being a daily choice, because
Totally.
I do think a lot of times we have this idea of happiness or all of these things that we get there, like it's a destination. We're there, and then life is just happy for the rest of forever.
No.
And it's something that I feel like isn't necessarily talked about as much, is that waking up and choosing to surrender and choosing grace and choosing to be happy is a daily choice. So other than journaling, is there something that you do, some sort of practice that you have to keep up that daily surrender?
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm not a product plugger, but I can tell you that one of my most recent products that I created, it's called a Fitspiration Journal. And, the funniest thing is I created it back in April of 2015. It went in Target stores nationwide. And I kid you not, I didn't start using one myself until September. I don't know. I created it, you know?
Isn't that always the,
Yeah,
we always
yeah.
give the best advice and then.
Yeah. I mean, I've used Fitbook for years, and it's more of a fitness and nutrition journal, but the Fitspiration Journal is more gratitude and mindfulness and, integrating health and wellness on a daily basis, but really being more grateful. And so literally how I start every single day is the Fitspiration Journal guides you, but I mean, you write down the 3 things you're grateful for every single day. You make note of one goal that you're going to accomplish that day, because I'm a big thinker. I have my to-do list is insane, but I think of one thing because then I'll feel really good about accomplishing that one thing. It encourages you to reflect on one thing you love about your body. And I kid you not, sometimes I sit there with my pen and I'm like, I don't know, like my toes look cute today. I don't know. But it's making yourself think that way. And then there are other elements of it. But my favorite part of it is, on one side, it's very guided and, it has a fitness or a nutrition tip and it has inspiration. But on the other side, it's blank lines and a box that says this inspires me. And so this literally has been a game changer for me. And I kid you not. And it's kind of funny for me to even say that because I kid you not, I did not use it for the longest time. And now I can't put it down. But, I mean, coffee, first of all, is my go-to. So morning is my coffee, my Fitspiration Journal, and my Bible. So I am a super strong believer. And I spend time journaling my thoughts, my prayers, just spend some quiet time. As an entrepreneur, I'm pulled in a lot of directions. And so I think I just kind of have to find that centeredness and find that focus and then remember why I'm doing what I'm doing. And then I'm a very creative, like crafty, artsy person. So I'll doodle like whatever scripture or saying came up for the day that really resonated with me. And so that is such a huge part of who I am. But if I even sit here and act like that's always easy, then I'm a fraud. Because the truth is there are days when I wake up and I'm like, I don't have time. I got to work out. I got to do this. I got to do this. That I'm optimally living my life when that is an integral part of my day.
I was just going to ask, I talk a lot about my morning routine. I typically reserve 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. for my mornings, for me, for journaling, for yoga, for meditation, all these things. So I wanted to ask you, I try to be really vulnerable about it and say, yeah, that's my intention every morning. And this morning, I only got to meditate. And tomorrow morning, I'm probably maybe not even going to get to do that. So on the days when maybe you don't have the motivation to do your practice, how does it play out in your day? And is there a way for you to kind of get back on track during the middle of the day, if you find yourself off center?
Actually, I've started this recently and I want to write a blog about it because I'm so fascinated by it. It's so simple, yet it's so effective for me. So a lot of and I agree with you. I think it's always great to have good intentions. And sometimes we just have to realize you're not perfect. I'm not going to be able to do my journaling every single morning. There are some days when I have to fly out and, travel somewhere. There are times I have meetings, things like that. But the days, what I've done, I added a reminder on my phone because I'm insanely connected to my phone, my laptop, any sort of technology with what I do. I have to be, but I'm also, if there were a program for people that are addicted to technology, I would sign myself up. I have an issue. So what I did, funny enough, I've added a reminder on my phone at 1:00 every day for 20 minutes, and I call it my tech-free walk. I literally leave my phone in the office. I grab my keys and I go for a walk for 20 minutes. I wear an actual watch, not my phone. And I just go for a 20-minute walk. I started doing this because it just was a way for me to disconnect during the day, because otherwise I would look up and it's 7:00 and I haven't stopped working all day, and it wasn't good for me. It wasn't good for my mind. And also I found I was, that was kind of my time with the creator too. If I didn't have time to do my devotional that morning and spend time, I'm not one of those people that has this guilt, oh, I didn't pray today, I'm horrible. No, not at all. But I realize that it's important to my being, and that if I'm not disconnecting, I'm not able to connect. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes so much sense. I personally have a reminder on my phone that goes off randomly throughout the day, and it's my miracle moment reminder. And every time the alarm goes off, it's opportunity for me to pause and just reflect on how miraculous this moment is. And it always goes off at such a beautiful time. And every time it makes me think, oh my goodness, I am so blessed. I live such a brilliant life. I'm so glad that I get to do what I do. And I know that it was hard for me to get into the gratitude mindset and to get into the mindset that life is working for me and not against me. And that's the biggest shift. When I was going through my disordered eating, that was the big step for me in the healing process, because I truly believe that I was alone and I had to fight life. And when I shifted perspective to, well, what if actually I'm co-creating with life? What if the universe is working for me and not against me? And what does that look like? Then I started, understanding what grace looked like and surrendering. And so I'm curious for you, what did you have a moment like that where you experienced an awakening of sorts that allowed you to be more spiritual and feel more connected in your life?
Oh gosh. It's hard because I think there's this balance of, how much we focus or dwell on the tough times in life as a way to be vulnerable. And I struggle with, well, I don't want to share my struggle too much because then I look like I'm not grateful for what I do have, right? But if I'm being completely honest, it's the times of insanely tough loss that just brought me to my knees. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't pretty. It was really nasty. Probably most people in my life never saw it because I do have this exterior of strength and of I've got it together. And not because I want to have an image of that, but because I don't want to be a downer. Like, those people on Facebook that depress you every time like something goes wrong. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, but there's a flip side to that like that's real, right? Yeah. And then the complete opposite of that is looking like you have it all together all the time. And I was listening to a sermon of the other day, and it was actually Pastor Rick Warren that said, we have to know our own weaknesses, because if all we do is share our strengths, people are like, well, good for you, So it's a balance. I want to give up that has really not just shoved me to my knees, like knocked me and face planted me into the ground. And then I look up and I'm like, all right, I got nothing left. And when I kind of choose to let go of my own control, that's where I found my faith.
That's so beautiful.
So Tice and I talk a lot about this because we, are both leaders in our communities, and we don't want to be the kind of people that are like, everything's great all the time, because let's be real, it's not. But we also don't want to be those downer people on Facebook.
Right.
And so we open up this conversation all the time about what does it look like to be a leader and share vulnerably. So is that something that maybe you could speak a little bit more to?
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. I think, first of all, you have to be authentic to who you are. I probably, if there was a group for oversharers, that would be me. Like, I'm just, my blog posts are 3,000 words or something, I just share, I'm just joking. I don't know how many it is, but it's a lot. But it's authentically who I am. And I can't be anything different. And I think that's part of, what comes with age and time is knowing, this is who I am. And this is, this is just who I am, take it or leave it kind of thing. But I think you have to balance that with surrounding yourself with really good people. So I'll give you an example of a really, tough time in my life was losing my mom about 3 years ago to cancer. And my friends were insanely supportive. I couldn't have got through it without them. And there was a good 4 months of my life that if you would have seen me, most people didn't see what happened behind the scenes, but I literally lost my marbles and I didn't know, which way to go. I just felt so lost in life. And one of my friends, a very dear friend, said to me, she allowed me time to grieve. And then she said, all right, Ange, I know you, and I know who God created you to be, and I know who your mom expects you to be. You cannot let this ruin the rest of your life. And the reason I say that is it's one thing to allow yourself grace. It's another thing to stay in the doldrums of hell because you created it for yourself. Sometimes we have to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, allow ourselves those tough days, but it's not healthy to stay there long, right? If you don't surround yourself with people that support you and love you and want the best for you, though, sometimes we don't know that we're doing it. So I'm super grateful that, I can be authentic and I can be me. But I'm also really aware of surrounding myself with people that will make sure I'm, moving forward to be a better version of myself, not staying in those dark places.
I think that's really powerful. I always say that your tribe, you are the people that you surround yourself with. And so it's important that you make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people who are going to support you and uplift you. And, the question that I have for you is there are probably many listeners out there who are going through that tough period and who don't know how to get through it and don't know how to pick themselves up and how to move forward. And they know that they're creating, their own version of hell and they're ready. What would you recommend for them to do to help them, inspire them, and motivate them to start getting up?
Well, first of all, it just makes my heart sad because those times were so real for me, and so it's given me a compassion for other people that I probably never had before. I know what it feels like, and here's the crazy part: if you look at if you look at Facebook, I have this amazingly shiny, bright life because I don't post the tough things, right? But Facebook is the highlight reel. Social media is the highlight reel, and the truth is there's so much going on in the background. And so, I have just the biggest heart for people that are struggling because I know what it feels like, and I know what it feels like to not want to get out of bed. I get that, and I think it's a couple things. I think number one, finding your purpose. Why are you here? Why were you created? Because if you don't have a purpose, there's no reason for being. And everyone has a purpose. Every single person on this earth has a purpose. And our job isn't to just be happy here on this earth. It's to literally find out what our purpose is. And I think one of the things that helped me do that, to be honest with you, the more I was thinking about myself, the more I was miserable. And the moment I realized that this life isn't about me, it started brightening things up a little bit. I remember it was back the same year I started my company, and I actually went through. I feel like I'm in therapy here, you guys.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I owe you $300. It was the same year I started my company. I actually went through a divorce at a very young age. It was a very emotional and tough thing for me. And a lot of my good friends don't even know that about me. But I was pretty miserable, trying to unravel a life that I thought I had created. And it was my mom who, God bless her, she called me and she was like, what are you doing today? And I was super down and bummed. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. She's like, well, why don't you go do something for somebody else? And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, honey, I love you, but you need to sit around and stop thinking about how tough you have it and get out and do something else. And so it was about that time I started getting involved in my church, and I started going to Mexico and working, not working, but going to play with kids in the orphanages and seeing their lives and seeing how joyful they were with what little they had. It sounds so Pollyanna, trust me, to even say this, it sounds Pollyanna, but it was true. It was take yourself out of your body for long enough to realize all the amazing, wonderful things you have and the amazing things that you get to do and experience, and focus less on yourself really does result in a happier being, I've found.
I just want to say thank you for sharing such intimate things. Tyson and I don't take this lightly. We feel really honored that you're willing to be so open with us and share, what it really looks like to be living an amplified life, because it's not all sunshine and rainbows and unicorns every day. And
no, but that's the thing though, is it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think I have this idea that life has to be perfect to be wonderful, and the truth is life is messy, and it's through the mess and it's through all that you really find out who you are. I mean, I was reading something the other day that calm seas never made a skillful sailor. You don't get to be great by getting easy, by having things go your way all the time. And And that sounds so, I don't know, I feel like I'm like on the pulpit or something. But I mean, I really truly believe that because I've seen it. And it's so easy to say when you're not in that moment. It's so easy to say when you're in that dark place, when you are facing something, if you are out there and struggling and facing something that is tough. What I like to say is like, it's really important. That's when relationships come into play. That's when your faith comes into play. Like, I learned how much I need other people. I was so used to being in charge, in control, go figure, and being the strong person for everybody else. And so I didn't even know how to accept help when I needed it. And so it's through that process and many years of like learning, look, just because you need someone doesn't mean you're weak. And really just doing your part in reaching out and surrounding yourself with people that really support and love you during the tough times. But on the flip side, I'm really passionate about only having people in my life that are there through the good and the bad, because there are some people that will always be there for you when things get tough. But they're not quite as there when things go well.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, draw a line down a piece of paper, and on the left, write the name of people that were there for you when things were really, really tough. And on the right, write all the list of the people that were there for you whenever, you got a job, got a promotion, got married, like all these wonderful things. And then the person that's on both sides of that line, those are your tribe.
Oh, you seriously, like Angela, that if whoever's listening, go do that exercise literally right now. I mean, that's, yeah.
And we love that this is the final topic of today's interview, because that's why we founded the Amplify Collective. That's why we have a membership group called the Coterie here in LA, because we know how important it is to be in community and to have people around you who support you. And we have each other, and we've seen how this relationship and being business partners in the Amplify Collective, but we also have our own business. And so supporting one another and being in this type of sisterhood has helped us both tremendously show up through the bad and the good. And so I just love that this is the last thing that we're talking about. And oh my gosh, time is running out. So thank you so much, Angela, for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Yeah, I really highly encourage everyone listening to connect with Angela further, because clearly she's brilliant. Tell us quickly where everyone can find you and connect with you deeper.
So on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, you can just look for Fitbook, Fitbook. And on our website is getfitbook.com. And if you go to our blog, I do randomly, we have a lot of great content on. I know we didn't even get to it, but like health and fitness and recipes and workouts and all these great things. And then every now and then I decide to peep my little head in there and talk about entrepreneurship and inspiration and motivation as well. So you kind of get a dose of everything on the blog.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you again. I'll write you guys a check for the amazing, session today.
And for all of you listening, as usual, you can find us on Facebook at The Amplify Collective and on Twitter at The Amplify Co.
If you loved this episode, we would be super honored to hear your feedback. Reviews mean the world to us, and it allows more people to see this podcast on their suggested feature on iTunes. And who knows, maybe someday we will read your review on air.
So be sure to check us out next week for our next guest. You're going to love this individual, so be prepared.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. And remember, you have everything you need to lead an inspirational and badass life every day. So go be amplified.